If you are building reporting solutions for Power BI or Excel that span across tens or even hundreds of gigabytes of data, or maybe you're building a common data model for your company, I got a perfect solution for you. This is Adam, and today we're gonna get an introduction into Azure Analysis Services. Stay tuned. So let's talk about what is Azure Analysis Services. Azure Analysis Services is, first of all, your in-memory database, but also your analytical data processing engine and everything that in a cloud as a service. You usually will see analysis services being by the end of your architectures just before your BI reporting solution. In Azure, in most of the time, that will be Power BI, and you will see analysis services as a backend analytical engine. So what is this analytical engine that I'm talking about? If you have, for instance, in your analysis services a table, a sales table, it contains country, products, and sales for that products. It's a simplified data model with just one table. And you have your BI reporting solution, in this case Power BI. If you would drag a country column from your table into the Power BI, what would happen, a matrix table would be created and analysis services would find the first value, a unique value for that table, for that column country, and pull it in. And it would do the same for each row. So by grabbing this column, you're summarizing it by country and you're getting two values. But that's not where the analytical part comes in. What comes in is that you can actually define a sales amount measure. And the measure is dynamic calculation of your column value. In this case, you're using something called DAX. It's called Data Analysis Expression. And you can define, for instance, that you want to summarize a sales from your sales table. What will happen is that whenever you pull this into your report, in case in our matrix, if we're pulling that sales amount measure, what analysis services will need to do is we'll need to evaluate every single row of our temporary metrics to calculate the value. In this case, for Poland, it will find the corresponding rows that were used to create this row. And then it will grab your measure, check what this measure is calculating. In this case, it's grabbing the sales column. It will find what are the values, calculate the sum, and output it into the row. And it will do exactly the same thing for each row of the table, finding corresponding rows, grabbing the values, and calculating the measure. That's the first part what those dynamic measures are amazing about. But additionally, it's not only about creating dynamic measures, it's about this context. As you already seen, it calculated based on a country, even though we never defined country in a measure. And you can do the same in other cases. If you have a table by product, it will do pretty much the same thing. So by pulling the same measure, it will grab context of each row and calculate the value again. So you are reusing your measures within your model, and it doesn't have to even be matrix. You can actually use any kind of visual, because that can be even a bar chart, and still pulling the same measure always give you the same values. That's the analytical part. And what is also amazing here, Analysis Services is really fast at it, because it's your in-memory database. Originally, Analysis Services was a part of SQL Server family, but it was also migrated to Azure, and now you have Azure Analysis Services. One important distinction, if you're moving from on-premises to Azure, you need to know that it's not exactly the same. It's a little bit different than on-premises version. First of all, you don't have multi-dimensional models, so no cubes for you. You can only use tabular. If you don't know what tabular is, think of it simply like your relational database. And the second important thing is, only models above 1200 compatibility levels are supported. So it's SQL Server 2016 and above. But of course, I recommend always to use the latest, because there's a bunch of features that you can use. If you've been working with Power BI, everything that I'm saying right now might sound familiar. And there's a reason for that, because underneath Power BI, there's Analysis Services. It's actually tied together with Power Query in a browser process. If I would explain those very quickly, then I would say Power Query is your ETL tool, so it's responsible for extracting, transforming, and loading data into analysis services. But analysis services itself, it's that in-memory database responsible for query caching, managing your data model, relationship, security and roles, so you can create this role level security, those dynamic measures that I was talking about, and all that analytical processing that is happening. So what is left only in Power BI is just that browser process. It's just simulated edge window with JavaScript, some visuals, and it's just visualizing your data. But when moving to Azure, you get a bunch of additional features because this is no longer SQL Server on-premise. So you get up and down scaling capabilities, up to 400 gigs of memory. That's the maximum you can actually fit there. Considering you can actually compress that from 5 to 100 times, but my experience is about 10-15. That means you can fit there about 2, maybe 2.5 terabytes of data. Of course, I would not recommend that much, but I would go for a few hundred gigs is pretty much perfect, a sweet spot. You have also scale out and scale in with replicas, so you can have up to 8 simultaneous replicas of your model that you can use to scale out your reports if you have many users. Additionally, you can pause and resume, so you can actually stop your development environments if you're not using them, or maybe even production in case of very rare scenarios for reporting during certain periods of the month. Additionally, you get automation capabilities. So there's a lot of additional tools in Azure that allows you to automate things in your analysis services and bunch of other features. So moving to Azure is really good idea. What are the common scenarios? As I already said, large data sets, because it can fit those models in Power BI of tens and hundreds of gigs of memory. But it's not the only tool that can actually fit this much data. But what is great here is that it can fit this much data but still have very fast response times, under just like 10, 100, 200 millisecond response times. So you can actually hook up those reports, live reports, and it will still respond very fast. And lastly, it's also very commonly used for something called common data model. Imagine a scenario where you have a sales database and you are actually consuming this data into multiple reports. What commonly happens in an organization when delivering those reports to a certain group of users, you define the KPIs that they want to see. So for each report you define KPIs. But the problem is that defining KPIs on a reporting solution makes a little bit of disadvantages. First of all, you very often do that a couple of times. You might have a mistake. You can actually redo the work instead of actually copy pasting this into another report. There's a lot of disadvantages here. And well, why to do that? Well, you can use analysis services to actually get it in the middle between your sales database and your reports and actually put those KPIs there, making it a common data model that you will use across your reports. Of course, you can either grab all the measures there or just grab the most common ones and let the reports define the report specific KPIs still on the report level. That's the common data model. The demos. So I have a bunch of demos for you today. We're gonna start with service creation. Then I'm gonna create analysis services project in Visual Studio. I'm gonna be loading some data. I will actually show you a nice comparison between Power BI and analysis services. Then we're gonna deploy a model to Azure. I'm gonna connect from Power BI to analysis services. We're gonna create some measures and redeploy our models. So the demo for today is a very simple one. A blob storage with some movie data, analysis services, and a Power BI. So let's jump straight to it. Let's start with creation of the service in Azure Portal. As you've seen, we need two services. We need a blob storage, so let's start with creating it. Blob storage. Of course, if you're gonna type, you're quickly gonna find also a storage account because that's the name of the service. So let's hit create. From the dropdown, I'm gonna select my resource group. I'm gonna call this AS demo storage. I'm gonna choose the region that's gonna be North Europe as always for me. I'm gonna leave everything else as default. Maybe I'm gonna choose the lower replication because I can get it faster. So let's hit create and hit create. So while our storage account is deploying, I can start deploying analysis services. So let's hit create resource, search for analysis services, hit create, and I'm gonna call it AMAS demo. I'm gonna choose the resource group, the same resource group from our analysis services example. Pricing tier. Here's the first choice that you need to make. Pricing tier is defined by tiers. It's development, basic, and a standard. Development, as the name suggests, should only be used for development because it's only 20 query processing units. Query processing units are Microsoft's way of measuring throughput and the performance of analysis services. A D1 is 20 query processing units. If you're gonna jump to documentation, you're gonna see that actually D1 is 10. So I'm not 100% sure what is the actual QPs that you get. You should probably check it, but only 3 gigs of memory. So it's very small. So development is just to test all those features and develop your models. But as soon as you go into bigger models, you will actually need to upgrade, probably to the smallest one, standard S0 with 10 gigs of memory for almost $1 an hour. So I'm gonna choose D1 for development purposes. I'm gonna select administrator. That's gonna be myself. So let me actually select myself. Administrator is a person who can actually do all the administrative tasks on the analysis services, including model deployment. So we definitely need that in order to be able to deploy our models. Hit create, and we just need to wait. Since our storage provisioned in the meanwhile, I will go to our resource group, open it, and go to the storage account, containers. I'm gonna create a container. This is gonna be called an input container. Is where I will actually put our movie data. So I will hit OK, go to that container, and upload a movie dataset. So I'm gonna hit upload, select it. And in the downloads, I have a movies CSV. So I'm gonna hit upload, and I've got it. I will quickly show you how this movie CSV look like, so you will actually get a good idea of it. As you see, it's very simple. Movie ID, title, and the genres. Alright, so let's go to Power BI. I will quickly connect to this to show you the experience and the difference between the experience from Power BI and Analysis Services. So I'm gonna go to More, find the blob storage in the Azure section, blob storage, hit connect. I need to provide a name. So I need the name of our storage account. This is this one. I'll paste it here. I also need to provide an account key. You can get an account key from this section. Let's go here, paste it in, hit connect. Once you do that, you will actually see your data. Of course, you need to select the storage container, hit transform data. A Power Query will pop up. You hit on binary content, and you get your data. So let's close that for now. So let's go back to the portal, and let's see that our analysis services already has been provisioned. So let's go to the resource and see what's there. As you see, first of all, there are 2 important things to notice. First of all, the status is active. That means the model and the service is currently running. If you're gonna hit pause, it's gonna be in status paused. You also have a server name and management server name. General recommendation here is that for server name, this is what you paste into your reports, because this is a read-only connectivity, whereas management server is read and write. While for single instance, this is not important which one you're gonna use, but when you're gonna be using a replicas, this is very important. So you always grab management server name if you want to work with models and deployment. So I'm gonna copy that, and I will actually go into Visual Studio this time. So in Visual Studio, I'm gonna create a new project, File, New Project. And if you have SQL Server Data Tools with Analysis Services projects installed, you're gonna find Analysis Services section and the Analysis Services tabular project. I'm gonna call it Movies Model. Hit OK. And here, another important choice. You have 2 options, integrated workspace. Think of it like that. Integrated workspace is the simulated analysis services on your machine. So it's Visual Studio are gonna be simulating running Analysis Services instance underneath. Workspace Server allows you to build model locally, but deploy that model and work directly with Analysis Services somewhere. It can be either on premises or in the cloud. Because our model is small, I'm gonna use integrated because it's gonna work faster. And the compatibility level I already said. This is the version of the SQL Server and Analysis Services that you're supporting. My recommendation, always go with the latest, especially go above 1400, because this one has the Power Query included. So I'm gonna go 1500, hit OK. And what I will want to do is the same as in Power BI. So I will want to connect to our data. So this is the workspace that you're gonna get as soon as you connect. Two things to notice: you have a Solution Explorer, those are the files within your project, and you have a Tabular Model Explorer. This is where you actually build your model. In case you would close this, notice that Tabular Model Explorer disappeared, and to get it back, simply go to Model BIM and double click. It will open the Model Explorer. So right now we don't have anything, so what we need to do is we need to import new table, and to do that we right click on Data Sources and New Data Source, or directly import the table and create data source in one step. So I'm gonna hit it. And notice this is the same pop-up that you got in Power BI, because this is the Power Query that is also included in Analysis Services. So I'm gonna pick a storage account, hit connect, same pop-up. So let's go back to the portal, let's go to the resource group, and let's grab our storage account name, and the key, and hit connect. And as you will see right now, we're gonna get also the same pop-up as last time. This is the still Power Query experience. So you can hit this container, click Transform Data, get the pop-up from the Power Query, hit Binary, and you're gonna get Power Query experience and a transformation. The Power Query allows you to create a transformation here as steps. So in case I would want to, let's say, transform my genre column, I could simply go here, split column by delimiter, use the default one, which is the pipe, hit OK. And then as you see, I got multiple columns with my genre split. And then I can go and unpivot these columns and remove this one very quickly. Remove, rename this to genre. As you see, I unpivoted this list to get each title with its genre as a separate rows. And I can simply click import, and this is your ETL for Analysis Services. And again, recommendation here: if those are super simple transformation, do it in Power Query. If they're hard or combining multiple sources, try to do them on the database level or in a different tool, because while it scales nicely on a small level, if you're transforming tens or hundreds of gigs of data, this will crash. It will run and time out, it will cause problems. Don't do complicated Power Query transformations on very large data sets. So as you see, 20,000 rows were transferred, we can hit OK, and this is our table. Once we have this, we can actually start deploying this to Analysis Services. Before I start creating measures, I want to show you the deployment experience. In order to deploy this to Azure, you need to go to Solution Explorer, right click on your project, go to Properties, and specify the deployment server. Notice by default it's localhost, but because we're deploying to Azure, we need to grab Azure address for the Analysis Services. So in Analysis Services, grab the RW, copy to clipboard, paste it here, hit OK. Once you do that, you can right click and hit deploy. This will prompt you to log into Azure, because it will need to verify if you're administrator on the server and you can deploy models. What will happen right now is this entire model is being, first metadata is being sent to the server, and then server locally needs to be able to access your data source to pull in the data. So it's deploying right now. Let's give it a couple of seconds. So the deployment finished. As you see, it succeeded. You can verify that by going to Analysis Services and simply refreshing this page. Once you refresh this, you will see your movies model deployed, the compatibility level, and the deployment date. If this is done correctly, you can copy to clipboard the server address and go to Power BI, but this time you can actually get data from Analysis Services. So let's hit it, but notice it's actually selected import. This is because I already imported some data, even though I didn't save. So I need to actually create new report in order to be able to connect live to Analysis Services. So let's create a new report. Okay, and now we click Get Data, Analysis Services. We paste the URL and notice we have an option selected, Connect Live. That means we can connect live so that our Power BI will be just executing the queries and Analysis Services will be calculating them. So let's hit OK. It will ask me to log in again. This time it checks if I have any roles, either administrator or just regular user roles on Analysis Services, in order to be able to actually read the data. Once it does that, it will actually pull the model into Power BI. When it does, you can actually select which model. This is the pop-up in case you have many models on a single Analysis Services. It will allow you to select which one. And if you very nicely design your model, you can actually put even the definitions here and the description of your model. You can hit OK. And this on the right hand side will pop up our table, which is currently called input. Not the best name for the table, but we can start working with that model. So we can click on genre to get a list of genres, a unique list of genres on our report. So if we want to work with Analysis Services, we can go back and start defining some measures. And while this might be not intuitive on the first time, in order to define a measure, you actually don't go here and right click on the measures because nothing happens. What you need to do is actually go here. This grid underneath your table is where you define measures. I think the Microsoft idea was here to get this Excel-like feeling for people working with Excel who are switching to Analysis Services. So you right click here and you can start typing your measure. For instance, movie count double dot equals, and type for instance sum of movie ID. But sum is not the best, so let's do distinct count over movie ID. Let's hit enter. As you see, we have 9,125 unique movies in our table. And if you define that measure, it's as simple as simply going to your Solution Explorer, right hitting deploy, and it will deploy the latest model version. Once the deployment is finished, you can hit close, go back to Power BI, and simply hit refresh to get your latest model version, and you can start using your newest measures in your model. This is the great part about Analysis Services, because you can actually, instead of doing matrix, just change the visualization type to, for instance, a bar chart, or use a pie chart. But hold on, that's not all. There's one additional amazing thing that I want to show you. In Visual Studio, there's a really cool extension that you can install. If you go to Tools, Extension and Updates, there's something called BISM Normalizer. You can simply install it for free and use it. What it allows you to do, by going to Tools, there's a new option called New Tabular Model Comparison. So let's do a quick demo of that. Because let's point what is the issue with the current deployment model. If I will actually introduce a new measure, let's call it row count, and it's gonna be simple row count, count rows over our input table. It's cool, and somehow I messed this measure up and I added 1, so it's not correct. But no one would notice that because I made that mistake, and I would deploy this to the server. If I'm gonna right click here to deploy, it will deploy and override the current model without showing me what changed and without letting me know that I actually made that mistake. So the great thing about BISM normalizer allows you to actually do a comparison between your current model in your Visual Studio and a model on Analysis Services. So you simply hit compare, you go here, you hit on the compare button, and you compare between your local model and Analysis Services. You hit OK. It will create a new comparison. Something here with the tool is the slide zoom incorrect, but don't worry about this. And notice very cool stuff here. It actually tells me that on this measure, there's an update. So once I deploy the model, movie count will be updated with the new part where the +1 was changed. And I can actually review it between the original and the target that I'm deploying. And you can also do for the row count. As you see, this has the status of create. So once I do that, I will actually create a new measure and override the old one. But additional great thing about this is that you can actually change this update to skip, which will skip the changes on this particular measure if you don't want to deploy it yet. Next, you hit validate selection. It will tell you what, based on your selection on the action column, what will happen, and simply run update. Are you sure you want to update target database? And this is, of course, everything that happened here is based on this logo at the bottom. Yes, I am. Hit OK. I need to provide the account key again. You every now and then will need to do that because it doesn't cache the key for that long. So let me go to blob storage, go to access keys, grab it again, put it here, hit OK, and it deploys the current model right now. It very quickly deployed it. Hit close. Do you want to refresh comparison? Yes, I do. And currently, the difference, as you see, is only on the movie count, which I, of course, decided to skip for now. And that is an amazing way to do enterprise level deployment, ensuring that you don't override your colleagues' changes and impact their project. So let's finish by going to the portal and showing you what are the other options available for Analysis Services. On the left-hand side panel, you have Analysis Services admins. So this is the list of users who can actually deploy, manage models, but also manage permissions and roles and security on Analysis Services. If you're integrating with on-premises, you have section on-premise data gateway. You can also back up your Analysis Services to the storage account if you want to. You have connection strings. If you're connecting from other tools using MS OAuth, you can actually get the connection strings from here. You have firewall, etc., etc. Important thing about firewall is that if you hit it on, you will actually need to decide what are the IPs allow it to connect to Analysis Services. So be careful about this, because if you're gonna set it like this, enable firewall on and disallow Power BI service, your Power BI reports might stop working. And there's not many more options here available, because this is as easy as it gets. Of course, you can also do scaling here if you want, so you can change pricing tiers later on. You can change how many replicas do you want, but of course I would need to upgrade to standards to get replicas and things like this. And on the closing note, if you go to overview and grab your management server, you can also connect from Management Studio. And to do that, simply hit connect, Analysis Services, and paste your URL here. Select Active Directory of MFA, hit connect. It will prompt you to log in. I need to specify the password. Sign in. And you're connected to Analysis Services as that easily. In database, of course, you're gonna find your models that you deployed, your tables, roles. Management Studio is first of all free, and second of all allows you to manage a lot of things about Analysis Services that you cannot manage from Portal. So it's one of the crucial things when working with Analysis Services for the cloud. As you see, building solutions for Azure Analysis Services, it's not that difficult. While it has its downsides, it definitely allows you to scale your reports into much larger datasets and provide additional benefits to your organization. That's it for today. If you liked the video, hit thumbs up, leave a comment, and subscribe if you want to see more, and see you next time.